Okay, my name is Shawn Horton, and I am a teacher at Insight of Washington. I'm a biology science teacher, and one of our trainings that we are working on is showing student mastery. And so I'm going to go over um, kind of the method that we use in our department, or at least in biology, and also show some instruction given utilizing the tool and how students show mastery. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to bring up is, oh, where did it go? Oh, it looks like the video didn't show up. We'll start here. Okay, so the lesson itself is over the cell cycle, and the students watch a video on cell fate, or going from a stem cell to a differentiated cell. And in there, they make observations. And after they watch this video, they're asked to answer this question here, which is, what observations did you make while watching this video? Record some things you noticed below. Based on your observations, what questions do you have? And then the second question that they're asked is to think about a possible scientific explanation for what you observed, like what's um, causing it to happen. And then at the end of the class, we watched a video on the axolotl and their ability to regenerate a limb. And the discussion that occurred at the end of class was very interesting. So I'm going to include that into the recording as well. So let me go ahead and bring up the video on this. And I'm also going to include the link for the recording. So I'll have this YouTube video plus the recording link. So let me see if I can get it to come up. If not, I might just have to refer to it. There it is. Okay, let me cue it up. Wonderful, wonderful weekend. And anything else? Pause it. Okay, so at the beginning of the lesson, I'm showing them this picture of cells, and they have to either talk in chat or on the board, looking at it, discovering it. So this really is the introduction to the phenomenon. So I'm going to cue it up to really where I start seeing them engaging in it a bit more. Let me see, it was 57, 40. So we'll start. Mic is there. Always open for you guys well, most of the time it's always open. Cells. Anything else? Bacteria. Is there anything unusual that seems weird to you on this picture? You can circle it or put an arrow, draw an arrow to it. Okay, so we've got some definite things that stand out. What about its size? So you see the measurement in the bottom left? The clumps in the cells are different. The sizes are different. There's no real uniformity, huh? Very, very interesting. I like the way you guys are thinking about it, observing it. Um, okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about this picture now. Let me go ahead and turn the blackboard off for a few minutes, or the whiteboard off for a few minutes. Um, so this is a thin layer of skin cells. Looking at it under a regular microscope, the cells have been stained with phenolphthalein, and phenolphthalein will attach itself. It's like a purple blue color, and it will attach itself to um, certain material that's charged a certain way. Um, so in this particular sample, we see a bunch of skin cells. We can see different parts of the cell. Um, we see the this dark area here is the clumping of DNA. So this is the nucleus inside the cell. So let me get my red pen out. This right here is an actual single cell. And this dark area, so let me write cell. This dark area here is the nucleus. Okay, I'm going to pause it there. So I end up, that's the nucleus of, I end up going through labeling. We talk about the cells that look kind of weird that are going through mitosis and cell division. So this really is a review of cells because freshmen should have learned most of this in middle school. So it's a review, but it is um, getting them to link into their prior knowledge so that we can move into the next step of critical thinking around our observations. So the next thing is I want to show, so this was after the video, after we watched the video and observed the video, which was showing a tumor cell. So let me go to that spot, 2734. Let me see, 2734. Okay, we'll start there. Okay, so I set up the timer for the students to watch the video because Neuro is funky sometimes, and on this particular day, for whatever reason, this video would not work, um, if I recall correctly. And so they watched it. I set up the timer. They had to think about um, why this tumor here was growing. The video shows the stem cells here at the bottom, how it differentiates up through and builds out these cells, makes them specialized. And then the second part, this last part is showing the tumor growing. And I'm asking students to think about why that's happening. But the first step is observing that it is happening. So the first question, that's what it's going to address. So let's go ahead and watch the instruction around that. I'm just fast forwarding it a little bit. There we go. I see some of you are still typing. Okay, so let's take a look. So I noticed that he said cancer cells have a difficult time getting through the process. That makes me wonder if it did, would it just die like other cells? Great question. Great question. I noticed that the green and brown cells are the start of a tumor, which makes me wonder if that's the only color it takes. So that's interesting, right? Because oh, I really like that statement. We can talk about that at the end. Like, what a great observation. You guys are amazing. Um, I noticed that the stem cells turn blue, which makes me wonder if they undergo the change. Become greenish brown color mutation. They had a hard time passing through the final stage. Makes me wonder how many other mutations could affect cells' life cycle. How many mutations can one cell have? What would happen to cells if they had so many mutations? And what's different about a cell's life when it has mutation? Excellent questions. Oh my goodness. You guys are so smart. So your critical thinking is incredible. I noticed that the stem cells coming out were different color and hairy, which makes me wonder why they change color as they do. And hair, yep. Um, I noticed that the cells in the intestine were multiplying for cell death, but when intestines with APC cause cells to pile, forming a tumor. This makes me wonder if you can get an intestinal tumor without having APC. Interesting, interesting. There's probably a whole bunch of articles out there about that. Um, let's read this one. I noticed that the cells move through the intestines, which makes me wonder how fast they move and how they absorb the nutrients. Excellent questions. I noticed the green and brown cells are for tumors. That makes me wonder if those are the only color. I'm going to pause that in that piece of instruction. So this really is an opportunity for students to see other students writing as well, which supports their thinking about it. And as you notice, all of the observations were different, which I found fascinating. Um, we always have a different lens in the way we observe things, and their educational level definitely impacts that ability to observe and come up with questions. So this was definitely on, I would say, DOK 3, at least, if not a DOK 4, in that they are taking their prior knowledge and being able to formulate questions about, in a scientific way. It's a very difficult thing for students to do, and it's actually difficult for adults to do. When we see this even in college, that this coming up with questions, we forget how to do it. Um, so the mastery of this again, we did it as toddlers, but as we are in move up in grades, it becomes more difficult for whatever reason, and so we have to practice it again, and that's what we're seeing here. And my students in this class did a wonderful job in showing their observation and their critical thinking. So I was very impressed with them. Um, so I want to go and show. At the end of class, we watched um, a video on the axolotl. And so that was at 4:50, yeah, 4:50. And the discussion that happened around it was very interesting, which is why I want to include it, because it actually goes to show the critical thinking that students are going through And I had one student in particular who was able to vocalize it, but there was conversation going on in chat around this as well. So, one, there was they gave an example of an axolotl's arm being cut off. It was an animation, and it was really quick, cartoonish looking. Um, so no animals were hurt in in the video, but it was kind of blatant and interesting, students' response. I don't usually show things like that, but this one in particular, the video was quite effective. So um, I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit of the discussion. Well, there we go. So what do you guys think? Yeah, um, your statement about humans and their extra arms, that's pretty interesting. Okay, the way oxals are able to regenerate their own limbs. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I agree.
Don't you think it's a little messed up? Because when if you ever done when they've done this before a lot of times probably, but when they first started, did they really cut off one of the arms, see if any animal can grow arms, or do they usually just
I don't know. I find it.
let's just
Well,
cut
I
off
mean,
the actual arm, see if it grows back?
yeah. I mean, in the wild, they lose their arms, right? So maybe maybe someone was feeling bad for it and took it home to take care of it and noticed that it regenerated. You know, that might have been the first observation.
But does that hurt for the axolotl to cut off the arm, or
I,
does it
w-
like hurt and then goes back and it feels okay? Like, does it hurt the axolotl when they cut
I
off
mean,
the
it
arm?
has a nervous system, so probably. But um, I mean, if we lose a limb, we go into shock, and um, people can die from shock, actually. But I wouldn't, based on the axolotl's brain makeup and nervous system makeup, I'm sure it has evolutionarily developed some type of physical adaptation to losing a limb. Yeah, I believe they probably do sedate. And, they her what she was doing was quite humane in, taking only a small section, but um, the lifespan of an axolotl is probably pretty
But
short.
she did say they're going to do axolotls and then do more animals and see if that actually works, so they can grow arms again.
Yeah.
They're
So that
going they're going bottom to gobbling all the way up to humans. So in the future, we're probably in the middle. We're probably in the where we can grow our arms. But does that really have to be necessary of hurting animals? Just to learn something that probably not going to exceed that much for science?
great question. I know there's probably a lot of debates out there about that.
Because that takes time, a
Mm.
long time to go fully.
Um, it's quite an ethics question, right? And I know there are laws and rules around the way they can do studies um, that are humane. Okay, so that was the discussion, and it was not a discussion that I had expected in the class. So, looking back, of course, as I reflect on my own instruction, I probably would like to have, if I would have had more time in class, have taken that into the realm of student to student debate. So, discussing the debate around animal testing. So I think that could have been a really interesting ethical debate, and maybe I could bring it in another lesson. Swing back around to it. Um, time, we're always really short on instruction, and so, and I know I went right up to the end, the very end of the hour, um, in this lesson. So, so that is the lesson, and oh, one last piece that is in here. I don't know if I have it, if I show it. Let me see. Um, yeah. So every lesson has a um, almost every lesson has what we call the student self assessment. So that one in particular doesn't have it, but every other lesson, they either have something that they have to write or they have to look at the target and figure out where they fall in it, like the pre assessment. So let me, for some reason, this is not loading. It's being slow. Okay, so here we go. Just doesn't want to show up. Okay, so here, um, the target was I'll be able to describe for this is like the next lesson. I'll be able to describe the role of chromosomes. So, because that the lesson that I showed was the very first introduction lesson to the unit, and I wanted to show mastery of being able to observe and answer questions. Um, I didn't have this at the end because we're just adding some things to it. But as instructionally, um, each phenomenon that's introduced for each unit, um, that's what I'm looking for. We're doing the question. So I don't necessarily have the students do a self-assessment on that, not until we get into the specific targets. And they do a self-assessment on it, and they always get points, at least 1 point. For actually doing this, and they have to discuss where they're at in it. And I usually get a really good bell curve, and I'll show the bell curve to the class. I'm every once in a while I'll be surprised at the curve. Sometimes it'll be not centered where I thought it would be, which I find very interesting. So um, formative is such a powerful tool to use in our class. And in my previous video, I showed how we use it to increase rigor. And my next goal is to use it to show student choice. And I actually have one assignment in particular I'm thinking about that I can show that. But this was on showing student mastery, and we use formative specifically for that, and we can also increase that mastery level through students being able to see what other students are doing and having those discussions in class. Okay, so that's it. I hope that answered all of the questions that were needed for this, and I hope that you enjoyed it.